My husband handed me divorce papers at my baby shower, but my announcement crushed him. Please stay with me as I tell my story. And please, do not forget to support our channel by subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing your loved ones. Your support means the world to us. Now to our story. Poke. Imagine standing in front of your closest family and friends, 8 months pregnant, glowing with excitement at your baby shower, only for your husband to hand you divorce papers as if they were a gift. That's exactly what happened to me. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Emma, I'm 29 years old, and I thought I had built the perfect life with my husband Daniel, who is 31. We had been married for 4 years, and after months of trying, we were finally expecting our first child. I was filled with joy, surrounded by people who had come to celebrate the new chapter of our lives. The room was decorated in soft blues and whites, laughter filled the air, and I truly believed I was the luckiest woman alive. As the celebration went on, I watched Daniel from across the room. He looked calm, even distant, but I brushed it off as nerves. I thought maybe he was overwhelmed by becoming a father. I had no idea that his silence carried something much darker. Toward the middle of the shower, he walked up to me with an envelope in his hand. At first, I thought it was a card, maybe something sweet, a message about our growing family. I smiled, feeling touched, and carefully opened it while everyone's eyes turned toward me. My hands froze. It wasn't a card. It wasn't anything sentimental. It was a stack of divorce papers. The entire room went silent. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. Gasps broke through the crowd, and then whispers started. I looked up at him in shock, my throat tight, my stomach churning. My baby shower, the day I was supposed to feel celebrated and loved, turned into a nightmare within seconds. I tried to find words, but nothing came out. My mind couldn't process what I was holding. Tears stung my eyes as I clutched the papers, wishing it was all some kind of cruel joke. But Daniel's expression was blank, almost cold. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady and sharp. I don't love you anymore. I'm moving on. The world spun around me. I felt the strength leave my body as if the floor had been ripped out beneath my feet. Friends looked away, embarrassed, while my family rushed toward me, trying to shield me from the humiliation. But the damage was done. My heart shattered in front of everyone. In that moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. I stood there frozen, clutching the papers in my hand, but I forced myself not to break down in front of everyone. My chest was heavy, my throat burned, yet I kept my face still. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. My best friend Olivia reached me first, wrapping her arms around me and whispering that everything would be okay, though I knew she was as shocked as everyone else. A moment later, my brother Mark pushed through the crowd, placing himself between me and Daniel as if to protect me from further damage. Daniel didn't look back. He just turned and walked out of the party, leaving me standing in the middle of what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. I could feel eyes on me, whispers passing from person to person, but all I wanted was to disappear. Somehow, I smiled weakly and thanked the guests for coming, pretending to hold myself together until the last person left. Inside, I was breaking into pieces. When the house was quiet, Olivia stayed by my side while Mark drove my parents home. Later that night, I gathered what little strength I had and went to face Daniel at our place. My hands shook as I unlocked the door, unsure of what kind of man I was about to meet. He was sitting on the couch, calm, almost careless, as though nothing had happened earlier. I held the papers in front of him and asked the only thing I could manage. Why? Why would you do this to me now? He sighed, leaning back like it was a simple conversation. Emma, I don't want this life anymore. I've been seeing someone else. Her name's Rachel. She works with me. The words hit me like a knife. I pressed my hand against my stomach, as if protecting the baby from the pain that was crushing me. My voice cracked when I asked, how long? He didn't flinch. Over a year. I should have told you sooner, but I didn't know how. And now, with the baby coming, I don't want to be trapped in something that doesn't make me happy. I need to start fresh before it's too late. I stared at him, trying to understand how the man I built my life with could speak so coldly. I thought about the nights we planned the nursery, the way he smiled when we found out we were expecting. Was it all a lie? My dream of a family was slipping away, replaced by a hollow truth I didn't ask for. I whispered, so you're just leaving us? You're walking away from me and from your child. He looked at me without guilt, only determination. I want a different life. I'll figure out how to handle my responsibility, but I can't do this with you. In that moment, I realized my marriage wasn't broken. It was already gone. And the man standing in front of me wasn't my husband. The next few days passed in a blur. I barely ate, barely slept, but Olivia refused to leave me alone. She stayed on my couch, cooked when I couldn't, and reminded me to drink water. I didn't have the strength to argue with her, and honestly, I was grateful. Every time I felt like I was drowning, she pulled me back up just enough to breathe. Eventually, I knew I had to start putting Daniel's things together. He hadn't come back to collect them, but I couldn't stand seeing his clothes in the closet or his shoes by the door. Each item felt like a reminder of the life I thought we had. Olivia helped me pull boxes from the garage, and we started folding and sorting. It was painful, but at least I was doing something instead of just sitting in the wreckage. While emptying his desk, I found an envelope tucked behind a drawer. At first, I thought it was old bills, but curiosity made me open it. My hands went cold when I saw hotel receipts, neatly folded, with dates that stretched back months, far longer than I wanted to believe. Along with them were printed emails and handwritten notes. I sat down hard, my body heavy as I read words filled with affection, promises of a future, and declarations of love. They weren't written for me. They were from Rachel, and Daniel had kept them like treasured memories. I felt sick. Every receipt told me he had been sneaking away while I stayed home, carrying his child, trusting him. Every note proved he wasn't just unfaithful, he was building another life behind my back. As I went through the stack, one letter stopped me cold. Rachel had written about her growing belly and how excited she was for their baby. My vision blurred as the truth sank in. She wasn't just a fling. She was pregnant too. The betrayal didn't just cut me, it tore everything apart. He hadn't only chosen someone else over me, he had chosen to give another woman the family he had promised me. I dropped the papers on the floor, shaking, my chest burning. Olivia knelt beside me, reading over my shoulder. Her face went pale, and she put her arms around me without saying a word. There was nothing left to say. For a while, I sat there, staring at the evidence of how completely I'd been replaced. I thought about the baby inside me, innocent and undeserving of all this. I knew then that I couldn't let Daniel's betrayal define me. I couldn't allow his choices to destroy the future I wanted for my child. That night, I packed the rest of his things with steady hand. Every box I sealed felt like a step away from the man who had broken me and a step closer to the strength I knew I had to find. After finding those letters, the weight of everything finally caught up to me. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I cried until my body ached, until I felt like there was nothing left inside me but emptiness. The memories of that day at the baby shower came back sharp and clear. The whispers, the shocked faces, the way people looked at me with pity instead of joy. It wasn't just pain, it was shame, and it wrapped around me like chains. My parents came over the next morning. My mom, Linda, held me the way she used to when I was a child, stroking my hair and reminding me that my baby needed me more than ever. My dad, Robert, spoke little, but the sadness in his eyes was enough to show how deeply he hurt for me. They told me to focus on my child, to protect my strength for the life I was about to bring into the world. I listened, but beneath the comfort, something darker stirred. Anger. It simmered quietly inside me, hot and heavy, stronger than the tears I had shed. Every reminder of Daniel out in the open with Rachel, laughing in places we used to visit together, only fueled it. He didn't just leave me, he flaunted it, parading her around the neighborhood as though he hadn't destroyed everything we had built. Neighbors looked at me differently now, their polite smiles hiding questions they didn't dare ask. I could feel the judgment in their glances, as if I had somehow failed, as if his betrayal was mine to carry. When the official divorce papers arrived, my hands trembled as I signed where I had to. The weight of his decision pressed down on me, but I kept my face steady. He wanted freedom, he wanted her, and he wanted to leave me broken in the middle of it all. But the more he pushed me down, the more something inside of me began to rise. Late at night, when the house was silent, I would sit with my hands over my stomach, feeling the gentle kicks of the child who had no idea of the storm around him. That was when I reminded myself that I wasn't alone. I had someone depending on me, someone who needed me to stand even when I wanted to fall apart. So I let myself collapse when I was safe, behind closed doors, in the quiet of my room. But I didn't stay down. The anger, the humiliation, the betrayal, they were heavy, but they also gave me focus. I knew Daniel thought he had written the ending to my story. What he didn't realize was that I had just started writing a new one. And this time, I would make sure it was mine to control. A week after signing the initial divorce papers, I gathered the strength to meet with a lawyer. His name was Mr. Harris, an older man with kind eyes and a steady voice. Sitting across from him, I laid out the truth piece by piece. He listened carefully, then leaned forward and told me something I hadn't expected. I had more power in this situation than I realized. Because Daniel's affair was clear and well documented, the court would not look kindly on it. If I handled things carefully, Daniel could lose more than he imagined. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of control. Mr. Harris gave me clear instructions. Keep everything. Every receipt, every message, every scrap of evidence that showed what Daniel had been doing. I went home with a folder and started building my case. The hotel bills, the love notes, even the printed emails. I organized them carefully, page by page. Each piece was like a small weapon I could use when the time came. It hurt to look at them, but it also reminded me that I wasn't powerless. Mark, my brother, noticed how serious I had become and offered to help. He had always been protective, and now he poured his energy into supporting me. He started digging into Daniel's financial record. It didn't take long before he uncovered something important. Daniel had been quietly moving money, hiding parts of his income, and making plans that didn't include me or our child. It was another blow, another reminder of how deep the betrayal went. But this time I didn't cry. Instead, I wrote it down, adding it to the growing stack of evidence. The pain was still there, sharp and heavy, but it no longer froze me. It pushed me forward. I promised myself that I would not be left with nothing, that my baby would have stability even if Daniel wanted to strip it away. Every box of receipts, every copied email, every note became proof that I was fighting not just for myself, but for my child's future. At the same time, I focused on my pregnancy with more determination than ever. I kept every doctor's appointment, followed every piece of advice, and took care of myself as best as I could. Each kick reminded me why I was doing this, why I couldn't give in to despair. I knew I couldn't change what Daniel had done. I couldn't erase the humiliation or the betrayal, but I could make sure it didn't ruin the life I was bringing into the world. Quietly, without anyone's attention, I started to build a foundation of strength. Piece by piece, I was preparing not just for a legal battle, but for a new life. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I believed I could win. The night it happened, I wasn't ready. I was only 37 weeks along when the sharp pains began. At first, I thought it was false labor, but within an hour the contractions grew stronger and closer together. Panic rose inside me, but Olivia was quick to act. She grabbed my bag, helped me into the car, and rushed me to the hospital. My body trembled with fear and pain, but also with the weight of knowing this moment was arriving sooner than I had expected. As the nurses admitted me, Olivia held my hand, steadying me with her calm presence. I wanted to believe Daniel would show up, that no matter what had happened, he would at least be there for the birth of his child. But hours passed, and he never came. A nurse gently told me she had tried calling him, but he hadn't answered. Later I learned he was with Rachel that night, unconcerned while I struggled alone. The sting of that truth cut deep, but I pushed it aside. I couldn't let bitterness distract me from what truly mattered. Labor was long and exhausting. My body felt like it was splitting apart, and there were moments when I thought I couldn't go on. Olivia stayed by my side through it all. She wiped my forehead, whispered words of encouragement, and squeezed my hand every time I cried out. I will never forget her strength, how she carried me through the hardest hours of my life. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I heard the sound I had been waiting for, the sharp cry of a newborn. The nurse placed him on my chest, and in that instant, the room faded away. My son, tiny, warm, and alive. Tears streamed down my face as I whispered his name for the first time. Ethan. Holding him filled me with a strength I didn't know I had. His little fingers curled around mine, his breath soft against my skin. Everything Daniel had done, every wound he had left, suddenly felt less important compared to the life I held in my own. The betrayal still burned, but the love I felt for Ethan was stronger. Olivia kissed my forehead and said softly, "He's perfect." And he was. Perfect and innocent, untouched by the chaos that had brought him into the world. That night, as I watched him sleep in the hospital bassinet, I made a promise. I promised him that no matter how hard things got, I would give him the life he deserved. I would protect him, love him, and raise him without letting Daniel's selfishness steal anything from us. Ethan wasn't just my baby. He was my reason to stand tall, my proof that even in the middle of heartbreak, something beautiful could still be born. The weeks after Ethan's birth moved quickly, and before I was ready, the divorce hearings began. Walking into the courtroom, I carried the weight of everything Daniel had done, but I also carried the strength I had built piece by piece. Mr. Harris walked beside me, calm and confident, reminding me that we had truth on our side. Daniel arrived looking polished, his arm casually around Rachel, as if this was nothing more than a formality. His arrogance filled the room before he even spoke. When the session began, he wasted no time declaring that he wanted joint custody. He painted himself as a responsible father who deserved equal rights, though everyone in the room knew he hadn't even shown up when Ethan entered the world. At the same time, he argued for minimal financial support, insisting that his life with Rachel required stability too. His tone was smooth, but beneath it was entitlement, as though I should be grateful for anything he offered. I sat quietly, but inside I burned. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about my child's future. I watched as Mr. Harris stood and began laying out the evidence. One by one, he presented the hotel receipts, the handwritten letters, and the financial records Mark had uncovered. Each page landed with a weight Daniel couldn't ignore. Then came the testimony about my labor, the nurse's written statement that he had been unreachable while I delivered our son. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, his confident mask beginning to slip. His lawyer tried to redirect, arguing that his relationship with Rachel didn't affect his ability to be a father, but the judge wasn't convinced. With every piece of proof, the picture became clearer. This wasn't a man making an honest mistake. This was a man who had chosen selfishness over responsibility. The tension in the courtroom grew thick. I could see Daniel's composure breaking, his jaw tight, his eyes darting between the judge and the papers piling against him. For once, the control he had always held over me was gone. Here, he couldn't twist the truth. He couldn't hide behind charm. When the judge finally spoke, I held my breath. His words leaned heavily in my favor. Full custody remained with me, while Daniel was ordered to provide consistent financial support. The house and stability would be mine, ensuring Ethan would grow up secure. Daniel's request for joint custody was brushed aside, his arguments dismissed. For the first time since everything began, I felt the weight shift. The man who thought he could walk away without consequences was facing the reality he had created. His face paled, his arrogance shaken, and I knew he was beginning to panic. I walked out of that courtroom with Ethan in my arms and the knowledge that I had protected him. The fight wasn't easy, but I had stood my ground, and for the first time in months, I felt like I had truly won. The day of the final hearing arrived, and the tension in the courtroom was thick from the start. Daniel walked in with a smug expression, convinced that things would go his way. He had told people around town that he expected to share custody, keep his finances under control, and move forward without much consequence. Watching him sit down so casually, as if victory was guaranteed, almost made me sick. I sat quietly with Ethan's picture tucked into my folder, reminding myself why I was there. Mr. Harris remained steady beside me, prepared and unshaken. The judge reviewed everything one last time, looking over the evidence and the arguments both sides had given. Daniel leaned back in his chair with a small smile, clearly sure of what was about to happen. But then the ruling was read, and everything shifted. The judge awarded me full custody of Ethan. Daniel's request for shared custody was denied. He was ordered to pay consistent child support and contribute to expenses related to Ethan's care. On top of that, I was granted ownership of the marital home. Every piece of security Daniel thought he could keep was handed to me instead. I didn't celebrate, but inside I felt something unexplainable, a mix of relief, justice, and quiet victory. Daniel's confident posture faltered. His hands tightened on the table, his eyes dropped, and his mouth pressed into a thin line. It was the first time I had seen him realize that he wasn't in control anymore. Rachel, sitting a few rows behind him, was impossible to ignore. Her belly showed clearly beneath her dress, and her expression grew darker with every word of the. By the time the judge finished, her face was filled with rage. She whispered harshly to Daniel, her voice sharp even though I couldn't hear the words. I didn't need to. Her body language said it all. She blamed him. The life they had planned together, the image of security they thought they would build, was already cracking. Instead of moving forward with freedom, Daniel now had financial obligations he couldn't escape and a household he no longer controlled. Rachel looked at him as though he had failed her, and in a way he had. He promised her stability, but he couldn't even protect what he thought belonged to him. I sat there quietly, calm and composed. I didn't gloat, I didn't smirk, I didn't throw his betrayal back at him. My silence spoke louder than any words I could have said. This wasn't about showing him off as a failure. It was about proving to myself that I could stand, even after he tried to break me. As we left the courtroom, Daniel looked defeated, Rachel furious, and me steady. My revenge wasn't loud or cruel. It was the dignity of walking away stronger than they ever expected. A few weeks passed, and life slowly began to feel lighter. Ethan had become the center of everything, and I wanted to celebrate him properly. I decided to host a small welcome gathering at the house, inviting only close friends and family. The rooms were filled with soft laughter, the smell of food, and gentle music. For the first time since everything had fallen apart, I felt genuine peace. This wasn't about what I had lost. It was about what I still had. People took turns holding Ethan, admiring his tiny hands and sweet smile. I moved through the room with calm pride, grateful that my son was surrounded by love. Then, just as the evening seemed perfect, the door opened and in walked Daniel and Rachel. Their sudden appearance froze the air. Conversations slowed, eyes shifted toward them, and whispers began almost instantly. Rachel stood tall beside him, her hand resting on her growing belly, as if she wanted to make a point. Daniel scanned the room with an expression that carried both arrogance and bitterness. It was clear they hadn't come to celebrate Ethan. They had come to create a scene. For a moment, my stomach tightened. But then I reminded myself that I was no longer the woman they had humiliated. I was stronger now, and this was my home. I greeted them politely, offering no drama, then turned back to my guests. I refused to let them take control of the evening. Later, when the room grew quiet, I chose my moment. Standing near the fireplace with Ethan in my arms, I thanked everyone for coming. Then I cleared my throat and said, "I want to share something important with all of you." Every face turned toward me, including Daniel's and Rachel's. "I've decided to start a business," I continued, my voice steady. "My brother Mark and I will be running it together. It's something I've always dreamed of, and thanks to recent changes, I finally have the means to make it real." A murmur of excitement ran through the room. I smiled, then added, "Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger or bitterness. Sometimes the best revenge is success." The words hung in the air, strong and clear. I didn't look directly at Daniel, but I could feel the weight of the statement hitting him. His face stiffened, his jaw clenched, and the confidence he had walked in with began to crumble. Rachel shot him a sharp look, her expression filled with frustration, as if blaming him once again for everything slipping away. I didn't need to say more. The message was loud enough without shouting. My future wasn't defined by what they had done to me. It was built on what I was creating now. My son, my family, and my own strength gave me more than their betrayal ever could. Daniel looked crushed, and for the first time, I saw him realize that his attempt to break me had only fueled my rise. Months passed, and life began to settle into something steady, something peaceful. My business with Mark was up and running, and though it demanded long hours and hard work, it gave me pride I had never felt before. Each day I poured myself into it, balancing work with caring for Ethan. There were challenges, of course, but the support of my family and the love of my son made everything possible. My home was filled with warmth, laughter, and purpose. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. Ethan grew quickly, his smile lighting up every corner of my world. Watching him learn and grow reminded me daily why I had fought so hard. He became the proof that love could rise out of pain, and he gave me a reason to keep moving forward even on the hardest days. My parents visited often, and Olivia remained a steady presence, cheering me on as I built something new from the ashes of my old. One afternoon, as I was walking through town with Ethan in his stroller, I saw a figure that made me pause for just a second. It was Daniel. His shoulders were slumped, his face tired, and his clothes didn't carry the polish they once did. The arrogance that used to define him was gone, replaced by a weariness that seemed to weigh him down. Beside him was Rachel, but the glow she had once carried was gone too. She looked frustrated, her voice sharp as she spoke to him, her hand gesturing in anger. Even from a distance, I could see the cracks in the life they had tried to build together. It was clear that debts, obligations, and disappointments had piled up around them, leaving little room for happiness. For a brief moment, Daniel's eyes met mine. I wondered if he expected me to stop, to say something, to remind him of everything he had lost. But I didn't. I adjusted Ethan's blanket, smiled softly at my son, and kept walking. There was nothing left to say. My silence was stronger than any words I could have offered. As I passed them, I felt no urge to gloat. I felt no need to rub in what was already clear. The truth stood on its own. He had chosen to destroy our life, and in the end, he had destroyed himself instead. That night, as I rocked Ethan to sleep, I thought back to the day at my baby's shower when everything had fallen apart. I remembered the pain, the humiliation, and the crushing weight of betrayal. But then I looked at where I was now, and I realized something important. Betrayal can break you, but only if you let it. Daniel thought he ended me that day at my baby's shower. Instead, he gave me the strength to rise higher than I ever imagined.